There are many wrongs in the Forgotten Realms, especially when it comes to the Drow, whether it's lording over unwilling folks, leading evil hordes of goblins in the name of an alien god who's infected tons of innocents with parasites, including our champion, or just being kinda rude.
Creature.
But that's where our half-drow hero steps in. She'll use her wizardly ways to conjure spells against oppressors, her sword skills to slaughter slavers, and her penchant for perfection to undo all the many evils her people have committed. All, of course, while fighting against the rising Mind Flayer threat. Can it be done? Well, we've got one way to find out. But first, the rules. No other party members, though temporary companions such as summons are a-okay. No respecking, no multi-classing, no illithid powers, no karmic dice, no barrelmancy or chessmancy, no saving in the middle of combat, and we're playing with the honor mode rule set, so we'll be keeping it that way. With all that said, let's move on to character creation. Starting off, our spiffy spellcaster is a half-elf drow, giving us some good dark vision, fey ancestry for sleep immunity, and the ability to conjure up a pretty light show. Since she's been studying hard for ages to gain the power to make things right, our champion is of course a wizard, starting with Ray of Frost, Booming Blade, and Minor Illusion for our cantrips. Because wizards can learn spells through scrolls, it's not too important what we take, but we end up landing on these for a nice mix of defense, utility, and offense to start our journey. Naturally, our background of choice is Sage, and we need to get our stats and proficiencies looking nice and clean, mainly prioritizing dexterity since we'll need it if we want to show off our skills with a blade, and of course intelligence and constitution as secondary focuses. And to finish things off, we make our whip-smart wizard look perfect and give her a name to match. So begins the journeys of Arya Elimunzi. Journeys which start right after she wakes with a parasite in her mind on a burning illithid nautiloid, and also somehow in literal hell. Terrifying conditions or not, our cool-headed heroes got a plan, and it starts with us reaching the helm. Along the way, we even find an exposed brain that we're able to surgically remove with our impressive medical knowledge. Turns out it's an intellect devourer named Us that couldn't agree more with our plan, and if a literal brain thinks it's good, then it must be. Unfortunately, sometimes a wrench gets thrown into your plans, and sometimes it's a steel-clad Githyanki who tries to murder you before a whole bunch of imps decide to force you into briefly teaming up. Our brief ally clearly isn't as graceful as our hero though, since she slips and falls away, never to be seen again. Thankfully, our combined remaining forces are overwhelming with 4 damage crits and whopping claws to boot. Soon enough, we find ourselves at the helm, and well, Arya's face kinda says it all. We planned for this too though, with some pre-dashing right before the fight and some dashing once we're in it. We're able to easily zip on all the way over to the control tentacles lickety-split. For a lady like us, alien vehicles are a cinch to pilot, teleporting us right back into the material plane, though it's a bit trickier to land, resulting in us plummeting right down to the beach below, where at last Arya's overture kicks off our grand performance. Sadly, some poor fisherman got crushed by the massive alien ship, but hey, at least he left behind this spiffy hat. The ship must have teleported here for a reason, so we get looking for any illithid cultists. Finding some brain cats that are significantly less friendly than our own, a pinned illithid that gets put down, and some opportunistic robbers who get a wee bit crushed before we run away, granting us enough experience to de-rust and remember our Bladesinger training, giving a whole bunch of proficiencies and allowing us to bladesing. We can do this twice per long rest, not requiring an action at all, giving us extra AC and move speed, advantage on acrobatics, and an increase to our con saves. Plus, we now have the ability to climax in combat, which ends our blade song, dealing AoE damage to enemies and healing to allies for increasing amounts depending on what type of spells we've casted. Just down the road, we hear shouting and rush to see what's going on, only to find goblins attacking innocent tiefling refugees hiding out in a druid grove while shouting the name of the absolute. So of course, we jump into action, with Zevlor the tiefling leader giving everyone temp HP and us being able to blade sing and get a whack, and we're off to a good start. Shield keeps us nice and safe, and our allies are clearly intelligent too with their AoE positioning. First blood goes to our side, as does second and third blood too, but eventually the goblins get their due, even taking out one more ally afterwards before we're eventually able to courageously climax on the last enemy to finish the fight.
That was the last of them.
Granting entry into the grove, where we find out the druids don't much like the tieflings being here. We convince some of the more capable ones to stay regardless to defend their people, meet the temporary druid leader Kaga, who clearly isn't helping tensions, save a kid from being murdered by her snake, and learn the actual druid leader Halson has gone to the nearby absolutist camp to figure out what the deal is with these parasites. Ironically, we also find out we're completely horrible at playing instruments.
That was interesting.
We're of course going to help these tieflings get out of here safely, and when one of the kids asks us to steal the druid's idol as repayment for all their suffering, agreeing is the least we can do. Arya's always been quite the proponent for reparations after all. To make sure we're not making a mistake, we steal Kaga's chest and find she's clearly up to no good. First, however, we set out into the wilderness to get a lay of the land, immediately detecting a sulfuric devilish scent as Raphael appears. Sure enough, all our readings have not been wasted, as he is indeed a devil, and anyone who's even glanced at a book knows that he is not the savior he promises to be. So we tell him to zip us back into the woods that he whisked us away from, but we're sure that won't be the last we see of him. While we're up here, we grab a pendant that lets us cast guidance and continue on, stumbling across a poor hound whose master has been brutalized. He's clearly not willing to leave his side quite just yet, but we leave him our scent so he can find us, and Arya vows to find a book on how to take care of a dog in the meantime. Since it's pretty obvious from all the corpses that there's some goblins around, we use our disguise self spell to turn into a full-blooded drow, and the plan works great when we get ambushed a moment later, but they let us go because drow seem to basically be royalty to these absolutist followers. Well, in the village, we grab the haste helm by breaking open this chest, making us extra speedy in the first few rounds by granting momentum. Elsewhere around here, we find some poor deep gnome being tortured.
Stop this thing!
So we spook off these goblins easy peasy and remember just how different Arya's values are compared to her average kin. But of course we let our new friend Barkus Root continue on his own adventures. For our good deeds we become even better at magic, hitting level 3, granting with it second level spells and some of our most powerful ones in the process. Notably Shadow Blade, which is going to be our main weapon for this run, as it's a finesse weapon that deals 2d8 psychic damage by default but can get upcasted for even more. If that's not good enough, it also gives advantage on any enemies that are obscured. As we get exploring the rest of the town for resources, we stumble across a hidden door in the alchemist basement, leading us to grabbing a scroll to conjure a quasit. Plus we meet a magic mirror that quizzes us on some pretty trivial questions that opens up to another hidden room wherein we grab the bracers of defense, granting a +2 to our AC so long as we have neither armor nor shield equipped. From here we head westwards out of the village, using our disguise to disregard even more goblins and find their HQ just down the road, where right as we're about to enter, a malignant migraine blasts our brain as the Absolute itself shows us visions of its chosen ones and demands that we follow them. Thankfully, before our brain gets melted, a Sharan half-elf shows up with an artifact that seems capable of resisting its powers. She seems to think that we need her to stick around, but Arya has way too much intelligence to want to hang out with a proudly displayed Sharan. Still, as we head inside, we get thinking about how we'll take that off her hands. Our thoughts are quickly interrupted by Crusher here though,
Kiss my foot!
and a fight kicks off. Unfortunately for these guys, with mage armor, bracers of defense, blade song, and shield, they need to roll a 25 to hit us, which ain't happening anytime soon. And it takes a single hit for us to lay out their leader, who instantly begs for his life, before sauntering off outside of camp, isolating himself in the process. Well, except for the Sharan, but surely she won't complain if we kill an influential goblin. Okay, alright then. Not even the goblin himself bothered to fight back, but hey, that's one way for us to get the artifact. The assassination goes well too, granting us Crusher's Ring off of Crusher's corpse, increasing our move speed by a further 3 meters. Inside the camp proper, we talk to Roa Moonglow, who continues to deck us out as we also get the Bow of Awareness. We don't really care about the weapon, but the +1 to initiative it gives is very nice. Also inside the camp, we find and free the legendary author Volothap up Gadarm for some reason, telling him to stay at our camp for as long as he'd like. Taking the opportunity to dig around, we lockpick our way into one of the 3 goblin leaders' rooms where we put our big old brain to work solving a puzzle, leading to an absolutely massive ladder going all the way down into the old familiar site of Arya's ancestral abode, the Underdark. When we arrive down here, we murk a minotaur, grab a very cool looking sword that sings to us, dodge a dastardly boulette that we cannot take on, and meet some psychic mushrooms that are very inappropriate. But at the very least, they welcome us into their grotto, where it seems we're not the only guests here. A poison deep gnome is very happy to see us, as Arya's book smarts let us give her the cure to her woes. Once we do, she tells us some Dwergar have her folk enslaved across the nearby lake, and she needs us to save them. The boots of speed she stole from them certainly help as an incentive, but Arya would have done it just to spite the sickening slavers anyways. Either way, getting to dash as a bonus action is phenomenal. As an extra bonus, the Myconid Sovereign wants them dead just as bad. Before we head over to do that, we meet a friendly mind flayer and fellow scholar named Omeluum, who thinks a nearby arcane tower has all we need to cure our tadpole. After a quick jaunt on over using our new boost of speed, we grab him and down the vile concoction like we're back at the old Bladesinger Academy, and find that like with any wizardly experiment, we've only empowered the eldritch horror sitting in our brain. Well, on the bright side, we're able to buy an amulet from Omeluum that lets us restore a low-level spell slot. Also at this point, Arya learns the scroll to summon the ever-lovely Quasit named Shovel, adding it to our spell list, but as a wizard, you can actually just get this for free if you talk to her after the initial dialogue. Down at the beach, our disguise tricks even the Dwergar too, making them think we're their ally, and when we show them the boots that we've got, they're more than happy to let us steal their boat and sail across to where the rest of them are. Surprisingly, we meet a Dwergar that we actually like. He has no interest in slavery, but would much rather just study the rocks and quizzes our knowledge on them too. Arya, of course, obliges, always happy to show off her studies with a fellow scholar, but as fun as it is to gab, we did come here to murder everyone he knows. Something that becomes a little bit easier when we meet Elder Brithvar, who isn't a fan of Nier, the drow leader of the Absolutists here. Brithvar wants us to free him from the rockfall he got stuck in, then gank him together. Which gets made even easier as all this planning has made our brain grow even larger as we hit level 4. We pick up a cantrip in the form of Mage Hand for some utility alongside a couple other spells to flesh out our list some more. But the real meat and potatoes of this level up is the mobile feat, increasing our move speed by another 3 meters, making it so when we dash difficult terrain doesn't slow us, and most importantly, making it so when we make a melee attack, whoever we attack can't opportunity attack us in return, making us extremely good at hit and run strats. To start off with our plan against Nier, we shove this scrying eye into the depths below with a strength potion, then use some bombs we picked up to blow open the cave-in where we can put down one of our folks who's gone astray.
Most curious.
As the fight kicks off, we realize Brithvar and his buddies aren't actually allies because we forgot to tell them we killed the eye, which is kinda silly, but it just means we need to be careful about AoE. On our turn, we get blade singing and stab whoever's closest before zipping super far away using our impressive move speed. That way we don't have to worry as arrows go flying, psychic explosions start bursting, people start shrinking themselves, and more of Brithvar's buddies barrel into battle. As things go on, 2 people on our side go down pretty fast, but things are still relatively even. Of course, it gets a little trickier when mind control is involved. However, Nier seems to be running in the completely wrong direction, so that certainly makes things easier. Arya, for her efforts, is just missing like crazy, although Shovel is more than making up for that, tilting the scales in our favor. The dust begins to settle as this momentum is all we need to wipe out all of Nier's ne'er-do-wells, leaving just him. His legendary action makes him immune to most damage though, and it doesn't stop Brithvar's men from slamming into him to take retaliation damage, so we make sure to only stab him when he's vulnerable, and try our best to stay away from the bozos attacking him anyways, not that it's particularly easy. Soon enough, our quick lead is gone as the last of our allies die to him, all according to plan. They were slavers after all. From there, we just stand in melee and trade attacks, hitting him way more often than he hits us thanks to shield. Before too long, he's gone for good and the slaves are free in one fell swoop, including our old pal Barkus Root, who seems to keep getting into trouble to the point where we tell him to go join Volo and Scratch at our camp. Elsewhere in the Grim Forge, as it's known, we introduce some animated suits of armor to to Graviturgy, Arya's favorite school of magic. And we even stumble across the titular Grim itself, a massive construct that would be much scarier if whoever built it attached a fly spell to it. Since they didn't though, we just need to lure it to the center of this forge with our minor illusion, then smash it with the hammer over and over and over again. Now that the slaves are free, we decide to get looking into that sketchy note we found from Kago way back when, since the goblin camp still seems a little scary. Heading into the swamp, we immediately bump into Auntie Ethel, who's being accused of kidnapping these two fellows' sister, but swears that she didn't. This seems like a family affair, so Arya decides to leave it to them, only for the old lady to suddenly use magic to murder both of them right in front of us. Okay, maybe not Arya's most heroic moment. Now we've definitely gotta add saving their sister to our list of things to do. Either way, for now, we stay focused, heading in only to find the swamp is covered in an illusion, no doubt to hide the hag's lair. But illusion or not, we use an invis potion to sneak past the plentiful elementals and find proof that Kaga indeed seeks to betray her grove as a whole and give it to the shadow druids. You don't need to read half as many books of lore as Arya has to recognize those guys are no good. When we head back to confront the traitorous druid directly, we find the rats themselves are the aforementioned shadow druids and a confrontation begins. To start off, we use a melee attack on the two folks closest to prevent opportunity attacks and dip far away. The baddies are focused on the sole good druid in the room whose wolf companion dies immediately, and he ain't looking too hot either. As sad as it is, we use the opportunity to continue our hit and run strategy with the boots of speed, meaning we always have enough move speed. Our goat in the form of a raven dies a moment later, and everyone left in the room starts dashing after Arya. Oh, also Nettie is here.
Hi, how are you?
Using a lightning bolt scroll, we managed to chunk a good portion of our foes, only to follow it up with another thanks to a bloodlust elixir. Druids have a lot of HP to burn through with their wild shapes though, so while they are stuck dashing after us every turn and murdering Nettie, we're basically just playing Ring Around the Rosie, especially since they also love healing with their spell slots, but if they can't reach us, they can't hurt us, and for the few times we do stay in line of sight, we still have good AC and a blur that we cast before the fight. So even if it takes a while, we get picking them off, with the only damage we take being from Moonbeam, and soon enough all of them are dealt with. To make sure no one else gets any ideas now that less eyes are on the idol, we go ahead and yoink it, handing it to Maul as promised, who rewards us with the Ring of Protection. This bad boy gives +1 to both our AC and saving throws and will be with us for a while. Now that that's done, we move on to the goblin camp properly, finding a room with a captive bear in it that might just be the druid leader we were told about. Either way, it doesn't want to be captive for long and a fight begins. Goblins at this point are easy pickings, and they're not even bothering to attack us, focusing solely on the bear, who does turn out to be Halson, and God knows why he was a bear when he could just do this, but I guess he likes it. Regardless, this fight is cleaned up just as quickly as it began. We learn about Moonrise Towers, the Absolutist HQ, from the Druid Man, and tell him to stay here while we clean up the rest of the camp. Though while we're in here, we do grab Wargfang to use in our offhand temporarily, giving goblins disadvantage on hitting us, making it really easy to clear out all the little groups of goblins loitering around. And since we destroyed their alarms beforehand, Priestess Gut here is none the wiser as we talk her into self-isolating in her chambers and use Shovel to get a surprise round on her. We definitely did not get crushed by a giant statue in an alternate timeline. What does happen is we use a cloud of daggers to start shredding away at her, since our regular attacks just cannot land at all. Unfortunately, it's not quite enough to kill her before she calls for help and more goblins start pouring into the fight. But she can't hit us either, so we're not too worried as we take her out on the following round and are left with some less than smart goblins, who also don't take too long to murk. The next goblin leader we go to take out is Minthara, who reminds Arya very much so of some estranged relatives. Sadly for her, trusting goblin architecture to keep you suspended over a bottomless pit is a losing game. And that's one less drow to perpetuate our people's foul legacy. Clearly, our studies are paying off, as with this we hit level 5, granting 3rd level spell slots for which we take Fireball and Blink for AoE damage, and because Blink can be a little silly when you've only got one character. Notably, our proficiency bonus and our Blade Song boost to AC and con saves all go up to +3 alongside getting another Blade Song charge. Plus, our cantrips get stronger too. The last goblin leader we've got to take out is Dror Ragslin, who Shovel helps get a surprise round against as we square up. Arya tests out her brand new Blink as we start off, throws a goblin into the spider pit below with a strength elixir, and gets blade singing as always. On the second round, we take out the first goblin, the spiders take out a second, and when Shovel gets obliterated, our whole screen goes black and white, and I start to realize Blink does not make for a good viewing experience. Our strategy for this fight is very similar to previous ones. We run up to the closest enemy, whack them to death real quick, then scuttle away, shutting any doors behind us, forcing any slower baddies to dash after us, which is all of the baddies. Rinse and repeat for a bit, and suddenly Dror himself is on our tail, though half the time he couldn't hit us even if we were next to him thanks to Blink. The odd critical hit helps out even more, but when we don't manage to blink away, he can still damage us with his reusable bonus action repulsor. However, it turns out our critical hits are more even than odd. Afterwards, we go tell the tieflings that neither the goblins nor our kin will be bothering them anymore, still drenched in their blood, mind you. And Halson shows up at our camp telling us that to get to Moonrise, we need to go to the Shadowcurse lands, and he is coming with us. Before that though, now that the way is open, we decide to explore the mountain pass since we've heard Githyanki are about, and if anyone has answers about mind flayers, it's probably them. Along the way, we meet Lady Esther, who sells us the Periapt of Wound Closure and the Graceful Cloth. The Periapt is an amulet that maximizes any and all healing we receive, which works wonderfully when we climax. And the Graceful Cloth gives us a permanent enhanced ability for dexterity, +1 to our dex saves and better jump distance, plus most importantly increases our dex score by 2 up to 19. Continuing on, it turns out the Gith are one step ahead of where we thought they'd be, already gathering evidence directly from absolute cultists. To get inside their crash, we head through the back door, making sure to invis past their guards, then just kinda act like we belong, talking to a Jacques Nirjira who is less than happy to do business with Arya, but is more than happy to get our cash as we buy the Knife of the Undermountain King from her to use as an offhand, letting us reroll low damage rolls and expand our crit range, as well as just being a strong tool to whack folks with since it's a +2 weapon. Now that we're here and we see how heavily armed this place is though, it's clear we've gotta power up a bit more just in case their leader isn't the biggest fan of us. Starting by exploring the rest of the temple the crash is located in, testing our might on a whole bunch of kobolds that are filled with wine. The hit and run strats still work wonderfully even on large groups of enemies, but we are more than just a hit and run specialist. After all, Arya is a wizard, and what wizard can't cast Fireball? Also, for what it's worth, she has been trying to finish fights with climaxes, but it just does absolutely dog water damage unless you cast a bunch of spells. As much as casting spells like fireballs helps in big groups of enemies, for when we fight folks like Gromishka who tend to turn into panthers when you cast spells, our wizardly warrior is more than capable of standing still and stabbing them to death without such tricks. In one of the rooms in the temple, we find what looks to be a religious puzzle of some sort, that we keep in mind for later. And further up, some giant eagles that we get a surprise round on since they have a ceremonial weapon that looks perfect for said room. With a few good stabs both from Arya and Shovel, we're able to take out the largest eagle instantly, with the second one going down right afterwards. Of course, as we explore and find good scrolls, we've been expanding our spell list the whole while. After clearing out most of the temple, we take another quick detour to get the Dwergar on the beach since we didn't blast them earlier. Naturally, we take the opportunity to torture the evil buggers first by subjecting them to the horror that is a marathon, then we obliterate them. Once they're out of the way, we decide it's about time we go free Mayrina, the sister of those two poor fellows from the swamp earlier, finding Ethel's less than pleasant minions standing outside.
Nosy, scum-sucking, lice-ridden little ball bag.
Both for their rude manners and for the whole helping a hag thing, we get the jump on them, doing our best to take out the blood sages first, since if we're unlucky, they can hold person us. Thankfully, the surviving one just buffs their buddy, and we're able to take him out on the next turn, giving the melee redcaps the old kiting treatment. When we make it to Ethel's hut, we find the tear-stricken and pregnant Mayrina in obvious danger, but before we can do anything, the owner of the house poofs her away and turns into her repugnant true form. Well, a fight technically does start here. She also instantly sees how powerful we are and retreats deeper into her home. We get following after her, finding some mind-controlled victims that we very quickly put out of their misery, with each of them going down in about one hit now that I've remembered to upcast Shadowblade. Following that, we descend into the depths, skipping all of her traps as any wizard should. Then we turn invisible, free Mayrina from the giant suspended cage she's stuck in, and quickly run the math through our Gigabrain to figure out where the invisible Ethel likely is.
Violence hasn't gone unnoticed.
Once our violence is sufficiently noticed, the fight begins properly, with us immediately running inside her chambers and shutting the door. On her turn, Ethel summons a buttload of clones and teleports herself at the same time, trying to mix us up. However, Arya's vast intellect means we can just ping her to find which one is the real one. Since she's so far away, we just shoot whoever's closest and end our turn. Because Ethel can't actually fit into her room when she's in her true form, we've got nothing to worry about. Now that she's close enough, we go on to pepper the real one over the course of quite a few rounds till eventually she dips under 30 HP, at which point she starts begging for her life,
Wait just a tick.
offering to give us a +1 to any stat in exchange for letting her leave with Mayrina. Now, Arya is no fool, so we're certainly not going to decline power, but we're not letting her leave with the girl either. We do still have to let the hag leave, but she'd regenerate anyways, so at least we get this clump of hair, boosting our dexterity up to a whopping 20, all without using a single ability improvement. Mayrina is clearly still emotionally distraught, and as much as we'd love to help with that, our hero is not equipped for this kind of challenge. Now that our debt to her brothers is fulfilled, we get practicing a bit more, taking out a whole bunch of gnolls we found laying about on the North Road, obliterating a false god and all of his fishfolk followers hidden in the Underdark, and befriending some ogres with the magic of hard cash. All of this is enough to take us up to level 6, granting more spell slots as always, alongside a couple more handy dandy spells, and most notably, we get extra attack, which does exactly what it says on the tin, almost doubling our damage output. Feeling as prepared as we'll ever be, we head back to the Rosymorn Monastery and put all the various ceremonial weapons we grabbed earlier on their appropriate pedestals, granting Morning Lord's Radiance, a buff that lasts till long rest, granting a d4 radiant damage to all of our weapon attacks. We also tell the Myconid Sovereign that we took out all the Dwergar for him a while back, and he gives us a sick new nickname. And more importantly, Bliss Force 2, granting a d6 bonus to all of our rolls also till our next rest. With all these buffs, we feel more than ready to confront the strongest Gith we can find in the hopes they can answer questions, and with the parasitic voice in our head that we've been ignoring telling us to do otherwise, we feel like we're on the right path. When the artifact they're interested in refuses to actually stay with them, the Kithrak here gives us access to the innermost chamber, wherein lies Charaib Wargaz, a very powerful Gith soldier and a direct servant of her, the false god Lich Queen Vlaakith, leader of all the Gith, who tells us that there's someone inside this astral prism working to bring back the Illithid Empire, and she needs us to kill them on her behalf. Our hero is way too smart to risk making a god, even a false one, angry, so in we go. Meeting the lady of our dreams, who still continues to be deeply untrustworthy in even something as basic as her greetings. She claims that she knows a secret that could undo the Gith Empire, and somehow this same secret gives her the power to protect us from being turned into a mind flayer. Of course, she can't actually tell us what it is though, that would make us trust her or something. Still, we can't really kill her since she is protecting us, we would instantly turn into a mind flayer, so we get preparing Summoning Shovel, downing a Bloodlust Elixir, using a false life scroll, drinking a flying potion, coating our weapon with crawler mucus, and casting Blur on ourselves. That's not all. The moment we step out, we down a speed potion and use Shovel to surprise everyone except the boss man. On our turn, we blade song as always before eradicating one of the Ardents, triggering Wargaz's legendary action, but we can just ignore those. Then we zip on over to the next Ardent, taking this one out with 2 more attacks. And we have Shovel trigger the head honcho's reaction so we can attack him without having to worry about getting parried. He, in return, does pretty much nothing except for trigger Booming Blade, and Wargaz is conjured impenetrable weapons keep missing us too. Next turn, we land a couple more brutal blows on him, followed by casting Blink, as Arya always strives for perfection, and to that end, we also go to fly to the corner while we refresh our speed pod. Exactly according to plan, everyone spends their turns dashing after us, and we're able to fly back to our target, taking him out in 2 more hits. Flying down to his crossbow man, our first attack finally triggers Crawler Mucus, letting our offhand attack get a guaranteed crit for the kill. The sole remaining thug spends his turn leaping on after Arya, which means we don't have to go anywhere as we finish this fight absolutely flawlessly, not a single point of damage taken. Upon looting them, we get a couple of Gith goodies to go, namely the Diadem of Arcane Synergy and the Strange Conduit Ring. The Diadem grants us Arcane Synergy for 2 turns whenever we inflict a condition like our Booming Blade does, essentially meaning we'll always have our intelligence added to our damage. While the Strange Conduit Ring gives us another d4 of psychic damage while we're concentrating on spells. Worth noting, our ring slots are pretty full and it takes Arya a while to settle on what jewelry we end up rocking, but for the most part we settle on the Ring of Protection alongside this one. And with all that done, we may not have gained as much information as we'd like, but our hero has righted some wrongs. Plus, as she inches closer to the Shadow Curse lands, she also inches closer to perfection, both in terms of how the world should be and her own skills with sword and spell alike. Moonrise is simply the next stepping stone. Our journey continues as we enter the Shadow Curse lands at last, as the second act of our adventure begins and the story as a whole only crescendos as tensions raise. Before we go too far in, of course we use our light cantrip to keep the shadows at bay, generally good advice that even the helpless harpers we stumble across seem to understand. However, a moment's lapse in judgment is all it takes in this horrendous place to get kidnapped by a living shadow and dragged to who knows where, only to be brought back as an undead monster attacking your friend. All the more reason why our hero will strive to be nothing less than perfect. We still have all of our buffs from the last act, so as we get blade singing and poking the enemies, they start exploding, most of the time, at least. After we pass it to the enemies' turns, they start completely clobbering whoever's closest, including Arya herself, while our allies are not quite our tempo. And worse yet, while we do still hit sometimes, they seem to be rubbing off on us. At the very least, in between watching them get slashed, we do get the chance for some opportunity attacks to make up for it. Plus, they even finish off one of the shadows that we've been weakening with our offhand attacks. Next round, we get cleaning up 2 more of the Shady Spectres with the help of our loyal assistant Shovel, and now there's only 1 left. Surely the Harpers won't... Alright, well, not everyone can get a job so well done. The leader of the Harpers is at least appreciative and marks our map so we know where their safe house is. So it doesn't take too long before we're arriving at the last light inn, right on their heels, only for someone straight out of our history books to ensnare us in some rather pathetic vines. That's right, the legendary druid Jaheira thinks that we are a true soul cultist, just because some illithid tadpole told her as such. Now who's really the one here being influenced by the Mind Flayers? But before things get too bad, Maul from the Druid Grove shows up to calm things down.
She's the one who saved us!
Just like that, we get free reign of the grounds and immediately chat with Quartermaster Tally to buy some more scrolls and the Cloak of Protection to boost both our AC and saving throws by +1. While we're here, we also see some other familiar faces, including Roland, who asks a completely inane question. I mean, if people just listened to Arya, the world would be so much better. And also tells us that his family, along with a bunch of the other tieflings, have been kidnapped and whisked away to Moonrise. All the more reason to head that way ASAP. Naturally, we still need a way to navigate the deeper Shadow Curse between here and there, though that's made easy thanks to Branthos, who's ready to ambush on a cultist convoy nearby. A convoy that just so happens to be led by one of the very worst representations of the horrors our people are capable of, a Drider, half drow, half spider, and soon to be 100% dead. The creature does immediately sanctuary itself, however, so we simply settle for running down to its cultist cronies and getting to work on them before using our boots of speed to dip way far away. As we see our allies in action though, we're remembering just how handy the other Harpers were, and as we see our enemies in action, we're realizing we probably should have just done this ambush without them. Either way, we get a nasty hit from the big guy as we try to go after his gaggle of goons to save our buddies. To speed things up, we also throw down a speed potion and heal up so we don't get obliterated. Somehow, our floundering friends not only manage to take out a goblin, but also survive a whole fireball straight to the dome, buying us just enough time to take out the spellcaster trying to murk them, and barely fail to kill the barbarian who's inching ever closer. Plus, as always, we do our best to stay out of line of sight. Sadly, Harper Branthos decides it's more important to whack a goblin than kill the guy who downs him a moment later. The pitiable abomination has made it onto the roof too at this point, and while we do very good damage to it, it's not enough to kill. Still, bodies continue to drop on both sides, with our Harpers avenging their fallen squad leader and the goblin returning the favor in his own right. Karnas himself continues to be pretty negligible since he's focusing on our hero, and with the last goon falling, maybe there's a chance our sole surviving pal makes it out too. But with his sanctuary up, all we can do is blast him with bombs and pray that, well, yeah, pray that happens, I suppose. All it takes after that is one more turn and 3 more blows. From his corpse, we loot the moon lantern they were using for protection, and in classic drow fashion, it's powered by an innocent enslaved pixie. Of course, in classic Arya fashion, we free her, and she rewards us with a pixie blessing to protect us from the shadow curse, even if she is a bit rude about it.
What more could a dingus want?
Now that we don't have to worry about the curse at all, we head straight down the road and find ourselves arriving at Moonrise Towers a moment later, using our parasite to trick everyone here into thinking that we're with them. A good thing too, because as we head into the main hall, we find their leader Ketheric Thorm himself hearing out some of the goblins from Act 1 as they try and talk their way out of punishment for their failures. And when that doesn't work, they just kill him. Huh, who would have thought it would be so easy? That makes sense. Turns out he's more than a little bit immortal, but once he's done with the goblins here, he simply saunters on off to go do something on the roof, leaving Arya behind to chat with his right-hand lady Zarel, who's so happy with the powers that the Absolute gave her that she kills her own bodyguard. Well, we know she ain't a wizard with intelligence like that, that's for sure. Plus, she immediately tells us about a super secret special relic that's hidden under the Thorm Mausoleum that Ketheric sent his actual right-hand man to go grab for him. So we've got our first lead on how to stop his immortality. There are still the prisoners we need to free, but it might be tough to do so right now, so we set out to become more powerful first, and we immediately start stumbling across more undead lurking in the dark. These guys are all pretty run-of-the-mill, with most of them going down into hits at the very most, and as always with our immaculate speed, they have to spend their turns dashing on after us, so it isn't really hard to clean them up. But it's becoming more and more obvious that the only person who's ever gonna do anything for this land is Arya, which means it's time to get hunting the most powerful undead we can find. We do at this point take a quick nap, removing all of our buffs in the process, but to make up for it, we cast Protection from Evil and Good and down ourselves a Heroism Elixir, followed by chatting with old J-Ring Othe Thorm. Sadly, Arya's people skills aren't quite good enough to convince the gold-clad collector to simply leave on her own terms, so a fight kicks off. Since we sent our gold to camp, we don't gotta worry about her one-shotting us like some absent-minded scrub would have to. And we can use our mobile feat to not have to worry about opportunity attacks, plus her goons are vulnerable to psychic, making them easy to one-shot as we skedaddle far away. Naturally, this gets everyone else chasing after us completely unable to catch up, afterwards rinsing and repeating for a few turns, poking at whoever's closest to us, breaking Jerry's armor with each spectral skull slaughtered, until just a couple turns later we get her with a single stab. In her toolhouse, we find the Gloves of Battle Mage's Power, making it so when we hit a target with a spell or cantrip that uses a weapon, we gain 2 turns of arcane acuity. This replaces the Bracers of Defense, lowering our AC, but since we have Shadow Blade, these gloves trigger on every attack, meaning our spells are pretty much always gonna work. Next, we head to the local hospital where the Dr. Malice Thorm has completely lost the plot, but perhaps our level-headed and calm reasoning can convince the dastardly doctor to let his nurses commit a little malpractice on him. Or perhaps not. Starting things off, Arya does her usual and downs a speed pot, then swings at the closest nurse, paralyzing her with some crawler mucus that we coated our weapon in beforehand, making her an easy KO, followed by picking up her corpse so the doctor can't resurrect her. With our remaining action, we put our arcane acuity to work with a lightning bolt, hitting all 4 of the rest of the medical team, and our movement is put to work by going on a little side quest to collect all the nurses we can. As always, we make sure we're far far enough away that the enemies spend their turns chasing us, letting us do essentially a repeat of the last turn, taking out one nurse, using a lightning bolt on the remainders, and a bomb this time, then running a lap of the whole theater, picking up every corpse we can. Another round like this is all our speedy spellcaster needs to blitz the remaining cruel caretakers, and we throw some haste wars on the ground to remove our speed potion without missing a turn. Now we can focus all of our effort on the boss man, continuing to kite him over the course of a few rounds till our crawler mucus finally gets him, leading to us having all the time we need to finish him off too. From his corpse, we grab a rather peculiar looking loot too that our tone-deaf queen decides to get some practice with later on. For now though, our Thorm hunting continues as we find ourselves at the local pub with Fizzibald Thorm, Ketheric's son. You can really see the family resemblance. He gives us some vile swill to down and seems okay with chatting, so we only pretend to drink and decide to entertain him to get some information. For some reason though, people just never really seem to like when our well-spoken wizard opens her mouth. This is another fight where we would love to take out as many of the stragglers chasing us as we can. However, old Fizzibald here is actually quite fast and manages to outpace his goons, so we're left wailing on him instead, triggering his retaliatory legendary action, but the mobile feat at least keeps us safe from opportunity attacks while we heal up afterwards. And as you could expect, he may be speedy, but Arya simply outclasses him with all her movement speed boosts. Whenever the zombies try and cut us off, we just slice at their ankles and continue on our merry way as an unstoppable force. A few more slashes spared for them on our next turn takes out these two prior patrons of the pub, and a couple rounds after that we get the very last one, making this a significantly easier game of Ring Around the Rosie as we get all fizzy here on the world's most extreme weight loss regimen. Sadly, the poor fella gets tuckered out only a few rounds into it, and that leaves only Papa Thorm himself on our list. Since we've had a chance to clear out the town and at least test our skills a bit more, we decide we shouldn't let the Moonrise prisoners languish too long. First thing we do down here is very stealthily use our upcasted Thunder Wave to obliterate the two scrying eyes wandering about. Then Arya continues to use her impressive roguish skills and a Hill Giant elixir to quietly throw one of the guards into a bottomless pit.
Being arrested for assault.
They didn't even see it coming. The paladin hiding in the corner abandons his post as soon as he sees a cute little cat, and honestly, I'd be getting shoved to my death just the same. That just leaves the scrying eye in the central tower, which is easy enough to toss out the window, and the warden herself, who we could give the same treatment, but there's a shiny amulet she's wearing that we rather want. Right after we square up, however, she breaks her concentration as we use our bonus action to stab her, immediately breaking our precasted blur. Thankfully, an invisible shovel is always at our side, ready to break a potion at our feet for just such an emergency. At this point, she triggers an opportunity attack, so we toggle on dual wielding to get two swings at her. And it's a good thing we healed, because if we hadn't, that would have been it thanks to our itty bitty health pool. When we get swinging next round, I completely forgot to turn off dual wielding, so now we've got no health and nothing to save us, besides of course our very good fortune. Shovel gets a much deserved notch on her claws on her turn, and we get the Spellcrux amulet, an amulet that lets us restore any spell slot we're missing once per long rest. Plus, that is the last of the guards down for the count, so we're free to go around back and free all the missing tieflings and Wolverine Bongle, Barkus's missing crush. A convenient boat waiting around back is here too, letting us sail straight to the last light inn. It is happy reunions all around. Barkus is more than stoked, and Wolverine, oh my god, Wolverine.
I said go home!
Yeah, we're gonna ruin this guy's life at some point. Notably, Roland is also missing now, probably gone off to do something stupid. A suspicion that is confirmed a moment later as we find him wandering in the dark being assaulted by a pair of shadows, who are so easy to kill that we manage to do it before they even get a turn, only for our missing wizard to get insecure because he's not as good as Arya. But hey, at least when we reunite them back at the inn, we get to hear him apologize.
Sorry.
Oldest helping people gives Arya enough experience to reach level 7, granting with it 4th level spells, for which we've already grabbed a whole bunch of scrolls, so we basically already know most of them. Either way, to celebrate, we pull out that loot we grabbed earlier, and Arya's playing is so good that we managed to wake a nearby coma patient, who immediately starts telling us about Daniel, a young boy who's also the spirit of the land trapped in the Shadowfell, and only Halsin can save him. A good thing he's just been sitting in our camp doing doing nothing this whole time. Regardless, he immediately gets prepping to open a portal, and so do we, drinking a bloodlust elixir, summoning a water elemental, and a pair of ice methods as well using scrolls. Halsin pops open the portal once we give him the go-ahead, and an epic battle kicks off. Immediately, we down a speed potion to help our action economy, fire off a darkness arrow on the portal so ranged folks can't target it, whack a nearby shadow to build arcane acuity, and finish it off while damaging its buddies with a cone of cold, triggering bloodlust for one more action that is a sleet storm where most of the enemies will be coming from. Our summons also start getting to work on their turns, making ice and doing little bits of damage. The enemies, for their part, trigger opportunity attacks and walk directly into the last light's barrier only to explode. Plus, the few enemies that reach our ice get slipping on it while even more hordes of foes start spewing out of the woodworks, all lined up for the world's most beautiful lightning bolt. Unfortunately, there's still a rather tanky wraith right behind us that doesn't go down even with a couple blows, but we leave him for our summons as Arya ice storms some other stragglers. A few shadows do come after us, but our water elemental manages to take out the wraith, though all of our other summons get shot down one by one before they get to do much else. And our ice's spell save DC glitches out as is tradition with this fight, setting itself to a measly 3, not that the ravens would care about that ice anyways. When it gets back to us, we get throwing around big AoE spells like lightning bolt and a few fireballs to melt the ice and hopefully reset its DC while damaging folks, followed by refreshing our speed pie. Lo and behold, the ice is actually working properly now, so we don't have to worry about the vast majority of enemies, and despite the cloud of darkness having dropped, most nearby baddies still swing at Arya instead. It quickly comes back to our turn where we blow up one nearby fella, put down a new darkness cloud to be safe, then continue our routine of blasting folks with even more AoE spells, using actual spell slots now instead of scrolls. With how few enemies there are left and most of them stuck on the ice, we don't really need to worry. However, it still isn't very nice when a shadow drains Arya's strength. So as is natural, Arya climaxes on him to get revenge, which sadly doesn't kill the two shadow monsters around us, but nonetheless they're dealt with in a moment, leaving behind 4 flammable fellas to get cooked by just a couple spells, as we actually defeat every single enemy.
It's done. I have him.
Unfortunately, it's not actually done, as it appears something is missing from young Daniel here, another half, so for now we'll give Halsin time to research that and we'll help him later. I totally won't forget. Instead, for now, we get a little bit distracted as we work our way towards the mausoleum, fighting off another horde of shadow creatures, heading into the local morgue and clearing out all the zombies, bumping into Raphael again, who drops some sick rhymes about how he'd really like it if we did his dirty work for him, which we're obviously not gonna do, and clearing out even more fish folk infesting the local shores. Man, these guys are everywhere. Before at last heading into the mausoleum properly. Alas, to actually get in the hidden Charon gauntlet lurking in its depths, we first need to solve a puzzle, but it's a matter of clicking a few buttons for someone like Arya. Then we find ourselves in the gauntlet proper, which is filled with another button-related puzzle, this time having us skirt around invisible walls to open the way deeper in. Barring our path, however, is a cloaker lying in wait, really earning its name. Unfortunately for it, we took a vigilance elixir, meaning we get to whack it around a bit as it spews out a million clones of itself, before triggering our opportunity attack, and we do our neat little trick where we turn on dual wielding so we actually swing with both of our weapons, giving free extra damage, making this an easy kill. Just gotta remember to turn it off afterwards. Either way, in the next room we see a bunch of skeletons who look like they've got a bone to pick, so we precast haste and head up to them, only to realize they've got no clue what's going on here, which means they must be controlled by Balthazar. Sadly, our riveting conversation gets interrupted as undead Charons show up to rain on our parade, as if they aren't bad enough while they're alive. The worst part is, more are gonna be pouring out of these portals that just so happen to be immune to our Shadow Blade. So we settle for Ice Storm, triggering our Bloodlust Elixir using one of the temporarily friendly skeletons, and learn the hard way that the portals are also immune to bombs, and also regular thrown weapons, cause why not? Thankfully, we can at least finish a couple of them off with Magic Missile, and our loyal familiar's fearsome some facilitation. At the end of the round though, alongside the existing portals spewing out of Sharn, 4 more portals also spawn, with our bow really being the only means we have to take them out, picking off the Sharns to fuel bloodlust in the meantime. Rinse and repeat for a few rounds, and we actually managed to take out all the portals pretty quickly. The Sharns have naturally been trying to stop us, but with some meatless meat shields to take the hits for us, we're a-okay. With our remaining turns of haste, the rest of the Sharns ain't too bad to deal with. One of them is even polite enough to throw our lightning jabber back at us, before them and all their friends are obliterated. And this horrific hunk of junk opens the door to Balthie's hideout a moment later.
Hello there.
While we chat with the wicked necromancer, we finally get confirmation that indeed whatever awaits at the bottom of this place is the source of Kethric's immortality. To make things even better, this brain-dead undead thinks it's a genius idea to stay here while we go do everything for him. So off we go, facing a series of 3 trials to gain access to the depths of this place. Of course, we could just use the knock spell, but Arya will never pass up the chance to ace a test. First up is the soft step trial. All we need to do here is avoid a few traps while sneaking past the roaming shadows, then whisk our way past the gate at the end, grabbing our first of 4 umbral gems we need. Trial number 2 is the self-same, which has Arya stripping in preparation, since this one has us face a clone of our champion, but it's nothing a little booming blade action can't solve. All for gem number dose. The final test awaiting us is the Faith Leap trial, which doesn't require much faith nor leaping, since the invisible pathway that leads to the other side is just right there on the ground, but nonetheless we have faith and leap our way across to grab our 3rd gem for the road. However, since we still need that 4th one, we get looking around only to stumble across a magical altar and a magical rat with horrible vibes alongside it. Turns out the local rat colony doesn't much like it when we take that one down, so we zip up to this little corner and use a cloud of daggers to blend them into a nice juicy rat slurry as more and more of them keep coming out of the woodworks. Until finally, the last one runs headfirst in. One more spawns in our beautiful blender, and that's kind of it. A little anticlimactic, honestly. I was expecting one of them to turn into the last living justiciar, thereby unveiling a great mystery orchestrated by Raphael despite a fellow fiend. Oh hey, would you look at that? In the next room there's a whole group of fiends, the leader of which Yurgir is talking about how his contract to kill all the justiciars in here was just fulfilled. But before he can celebrate too much, Raphael shows up and whisks him away, leaving behind all of his little goodies, including the 4th and final umbral gem. Now we could go down to the bottom of this place at this very moment, but we should deal with Balthazar first. Arya does her usual prep before the fight and also downs a speed pot, and Shovel gets everyone except the boss man surprised. He doesn't really do much on his turn, but unfortunately neither do we, since we miss with all of our booming blade attacks. Realizing that he's outclassed by a true wizard, he desperately tries to skedaddle on his turn, but we outclass him even in movement speed, and after a couple rounds of him whiffing his spells, he's down for good. Hopefully. It's always hard to tell with necromancers. His brother Flesh is theoretically scary as well if he can catch up to us, but specifically with our speed potions active, that is not gonna happen, and when he dips to low health he goes berserk, wailing on all the other little undead. Once they're out of the way, the uncreatively named Flesh Golem gets given the same treatment as his brother. With all tests aced and all foes felled, all that needs doing is heading to the bottom to use our umbral gems and find what awaits us on the other side. A pool of liquid darkness that is more than what it appears. It is in fact a portal to another dimension, one Arya has only read about, the Shadowfell. Sadly, we don't get to put our scholarly instincts to work too much since this is a self-contained part of it, and the only thing of interest is the sole figure imprisoned at the bottom. The source of Kethric's immortality requires only a hand of companionship to be freed, and thus the Night Song is enslaved no longer. The demigod daughter of Selûne, Dame Aelin, is now ready to drop some sick one-liners.
To kill Ketheric Thorn.
And show us what she's made of as she goes to raid Moonrise by her lonesome. When we get there ourselves, we find the Harpers are all raring to go too, and while it looks like the bad guys really want a monologue, Arya is far too smart for that and sends in Shovel to get a surprise round instead. Our hero herself runs in with haste active, active and immediately gets to work on one of the paladins building up arcane acuity to blast a whole group of folks with a lightning bolt. The Harper allies that came with us have a reasonable go at things, but it's clear they're not gonna be much use. Next round we bait out a counterspell with Featherfall, followed by continuing our lightning bolt barrage and whacking Zarel herself, scoring a crit hit which doubles our damage and also the damage we take from her fire shield, leading to us having to heal with a potion we throw and a fireball from afar to stay away from the paladins. Unfortunately, the legendary hero Jaheira, renowned for saving the world against impossible threats, did not seem to get the memo. At this point, the fight settles into a more familiar routine, with the baddies chasing after us on their turns and Arya running in on hers to get a truly inordinate amount of crit hits, continued by our Harpers acting sort of as fodder, since the archers here don't much care to follow our highly developed strategies such as walking away from the people trying to stab you. Either way, the fight continues with us picking off whoever is closest, and sadly, as the round goes by, there's a little we can do as these hapless Harpers, including Tally, get picked off. We do try and throw some bombs at the cultists to get them dead before all of our friends go down, and we get pretty dang close until 3 more enemies join the fight, at which point there's really only so much we can do. Arya is pretty cool-headed, but even she isn't a big fan of seeing her friends get dropped down one by one, and the remaining bad guys get subjected to all her feelings on the matter. The furious fighting brings us up to level 8, granting with it more spells and spell slots as always, but more importantly, we get Warcaster as a feat, letting us use Shocking Grasp for opportunity attacks and giving advantage while concentrating on spells, making us feel way safer when we use stuff like Haste in the middle of combat. Before we head to the roof and confront Ketheric, we get our spell slots back with a quick rest and solve a puzzle in the center of town by pressing these plaques in order to spell a message and open a hidden passageway to a Sharon sanctuary. In here, there are 3 statues, one for each mental stat, and as we pass their tests with flying colors, we get a temporary +5 to each of these stats. We also swing by the Gauntlet of Shar again, where there's yet another statue to test us, and when we pass this one, we get resistance to all necrotic damage till our next long rest as well. Then we finally get to the rooftop where Aelin has been putting in work for the last couple days, and Ketheric has certainly seen better ones.
What have you done to me?
Arya attempts to talk some sense into the man, but her silver tongue puts in work as always, and our fight begins properly. Since we're entering with a speed and flying potion active, we zip right over to Sustera the Necromancer, who sadly we failed to kill, but so long as we end our turn up here, we at least don't need to worry about all of that happening to us. Plus, the Necromites can't actually hit us thanks to our high AC and protection from evil and good. And wouldn't you know it, Aelin plus the enemy's own skeletal cocoon is enough to take out the Mistress of Souls. From here, we just fly down to Ketheric, trigger his opportunity attack so we don't need to worry about his shield bash, then whack him a couple times in the face, getting some meaty booming blades, to the point where when he moves on his turn, he goes flying right into a cutscene, in which he summons a giant tentacle to take out a very briefly mobile Aelin, and I don't think she's getting up again. Especially since they teleport somewhere deep underground and we're left behind. Cleaning up the remaining stragglers really isn't tough since we've got plenty of AoE and we're really dang good at stabbing. Of course, once they're dead, or extra dead, we're not letting the big man get away, so we jump into the massive pit after him only to end up in an Illithid colony. There's plenty of intellect devourers all loitering around, and while they may not be immediately hostile to Arya, we sure are hostile to them. Plus, we find Zevlor and a couple flaming fists kept in pods alongside mind flayers, which means freeing them all and picking off the mind flayers before they can do any real harm. Sadly, our favorite Hellrider is not so willing to fight alongside us against Ketheric and would rather look around the colony to find any other survivors. Something we do ourselves as well, instead stumbling upon our old friend and fellow brainiac, Us, who decides to join us as a summon for the rest of our journeys. In the room next to it, we find a massive horde of undead, including a Death Shepherd who has the fun ability to resurrect fellow undead to full HP, which means he's really gotta go ASAP, but the rest of this room ain't too bad, with protection from evil and good keeping us nice and safe, while our incredible amounts of AoE between our spells and bomb collection eradicate all of the little folks. A good fight deserves a good reward, and Arya gets hers in the form of another puzzle which she solves in record time. That's honestly reward in its own right, but we do get a brain in a jar for doing so, and once we put it in this machine, it speaks to us and offers supposed to teach us the Githzerai mind barrier in exchange for putting it out of its misery. Something we happily do, and now we have advantage on all intelligence saves permanently. Also, there's this really weird rock here giving off frankly awful vibes, so we just throw it into a nearby pit. I'm sure it wasn't too important. Now at last, it's time for our final showdown, but before we head down to Ketheric, we summon some methods, concentrate on protection from evil and good, summon Shovel, and our newest / oldest pal Us, all before using this pod to restore our resources. Awaiting us in the depths is not just Ketheric, but the two other chosen of the Absolute, Gortash and Orin, none of whom seem particularly stable, and they certainly don't seem to like each other much. But they do need to work together, as they are actually each chosen of the Dead Three, and the Absolute is an Elder Brain that works for them thanks to their fancy netherstones. Thankfully, we don't need to deal with all of that right now, as the brain teleports away alongside the other two chosen. As a bit more prep, we throw down a flying potion and invis potion so the whole gang can get in position around this mind flayer as we gank it. Unfortunately, we gotta listen to this man lie through his teeth.
As predicted.
Like he isn't just as surprised as his goons before the fight actually kicks off properly. Starting off, we get all of our buddies in initiative and almost manage to kill the Illithid right off the bat, using a speed potion to free Aelin, who's just kind of in the corner. Us takes out the Illithid on its turn, and Aelin gets doing what she does best. Not a lot. Then we get the whole gang grouping up on Ketheric, shooting, blasting, stabbing, and eventually taking him out with Aelin's moonbeam, of all things. Out of sheer embarrassment from losing a fight to Aelin, the man plunges himself into the abyss. However, his god is not done with him yet, and unfortunately not done with us either. He is, however, very done with Aelin, who will not be rejoining us thanks to his bone chill aura. However, fret not, Arya's got a plan for this, as she does all things, starting by using however many spell slots it takes to blind the bone man. Now the only thing he can really do on his turn is call out the damned, which does obliterate our summons, but it takes out the endlessly spawning necromites too, and it doesn't do much to Arya herself. Then on our turns from here on out, we fly down to him and whack him, taking his legendary action on the chin, which he can't frighten us with thanks to protection from evil, and heal up our HP. The following turn is enough to lower his HP to the point where he realizes he needs healing too, but a bone chill puts a stop to that before it can even begin. Doesn't stop him from chowing down on his necromites though, giving access to Finger of Death, which he can't use anyways because of the fact that he's blind. So we just fly down to blow him up with our weapon, followed by a bone chill, then heal up, and of course refresh our potions whenever we need to. All the while he wails impotently on his turns, not even dealing enough damage to his own necromites, let alone Arya. Do this for just a couple more rounds, and Merkel finds out he was just another problem for our potent perfectionist to solve. After Aelin wakes up from her sweet dreams to proclaim victory, we grab the first of 3 netherstones we'll need and reunite Aelin with Isabel, her long-lost lover and a cleric of Selûne, which feels kinda like she's dating her boss's daughter. Anyways, now at last, we're free to head towards the city proper with the Shadowlands completely...
The sight of the land you leave behind does nothing to alleviate your sorrow.
Oh my god. Real quick, we go track down Thaniel's other half, drop a wall of fire to scorch all of his summons right as they got conjured up, and use our ever lovely Shadow Blade to destroy the bigger ones that are not so easily melted. Once all of his protections are removed, at last Arya's silver tongue is enough to convince Oliver here to recombine with his better half. And just like that, we're free to head towards the city proper, with the Shadowlands completely saved. And if we can talk an unruly child into doing what we want, maybe, just maybe, other seemingly impossible feats will follow in the final act of our journey. Baldur's Gate, here we come. Arya Alamunzi finds herself a day's travel away from Baldur's Gate at last, and as she stands here, she can't help but realize this last leg of her journey will undoubtedly be the climax that her whole life has been edging towards. And as our hero is laying in bed musing on these thoughts, suddenly our dream visitor starts ruining our peaceful trance, screaming for help as a gang of Githyanki come bursting out of a portal to the prism. We of course use a Misty Step to ignore them and run to the portal, because even when we're not half asleep, fighting Gith is a walking nightmare. Unfortunately, the nightmare does not end as we arrive in the astral prism, and the barrier protecting our dream visitor is punched to smithereens. Arya is not quite pleased. After doing our usual daily buffs, we jump into the nearest fight where a couple of Gith are just finishing off friendly intellect devourers of all things. Hopefully they don't hold a grudge for what we did last act. Our actual opponents here die super quickly on our very first turn, so we're not really worried for now. But things get a little bit more complicated as we arrive at the main fight, where our wicked smart wizard immediately puts 2 and 2 together and realizes our protective dream visitor is actually an illithid, and worse yet, they suck at fighting. Because we need them so we don't turn into a malevolent murderous mind flayer, we join the fight on their side. Thanks to our precasted haste and a hill giant strength elixir, after taking a chunky opportunity attack, we're able to zip right over to the Zephyr Gish, who's priority 1 since they can hold person, immediately tossing them into the void to float forevermore. Then we heal up with a potion and use a roaring thunder arrow to attempt to get another one to no avail. The remaining not so tactical Gith decide to prioritize the brain cats for some reason and still fail to eliminate them before the Emperor, that's our dream visitor, gets a stun on 2 of them. Unfortunately, we don't really capitalize on it as Arya jumps across the way and fails all 3 of her attempts to yeet this guy into the abyss as well. Still, he's got bigger things to worry about, like these 2 intellect devourers, and even then, one survives. Either way, we get him on the next round alongside one of his buddies down on the ground too, and the remaining warrior completes his lifelong dream of killing the intellect devourers before also getting thrown to a torturous eternity of floating forever through the astral plane. Once they're all dealt with, we learn from the Emperor that this imprisoned Gith is Prince Orpheus, the rightful ruler of the Githyanki and the true source of our protection. The Emperor is simply a leech. If there's anything Arya cannot abide, it is a slaver who thinks himself better than other slavers, so as we head back to bed, we vow to try and free him the first chance we get. The next morning, as we're headed into town, we get assailed by this young child.
I can't find my mum.
We're not exactly good with kids, but we see no reason to hide the truth from this poor refugee and go about our business content that we didn't lie. From here, we see a circus of the last days on the side of the road and decide to go check it out. The guard they have up front is a little rude, but our people's skills actually work for once and we talk our way inside. Whereupon we meet Boney of Stony and Boney's Creations, who sells us a magical statue of herself for the low price of 5,000 gold that grants the Sweetstone features permanent buff. Quite literally just the bless spell, granting a d4 boost to both our attack rolls and saving throws. We also notice there's a genie nearby using a ring of mage hand to cheat customers out of what's supposed to be a game of chance. Naturally, we steal it from him. And to rub it in his face, we use the wheel ourselves, landing on the jackpot.
Possible.
He doesn't much like that though, and Arya ends up getting teleported into a jungle full of dinosaurs, if you'd believe it. This Jurassic Park is more than a little scary with all the livid lizards lazing about, and to make it a little bit less scary, we precast haste and square up properly. We're able to take out one very quickly, however, as another spots us, it immediately dashes and pounces, knocking us prone and breaking our concentration, where we learn that they can't really hit us. Especially once we get concentrating on a blur spell, it turns out they're more bark than bite, or whatever sound dinosaurs make. One of them does start getting horny though, which makes the others horny too, which I guess is a buff, but they go down too, all the same, horny or otherwise, in just a few rounds till eventually the place is cleared out. Now that we're able to look around, we find the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel in a nearby backpack, which lets us use illusion and enchantment spells as a bonus action after hitting someone with a weapon. Obviously really great for our action economy, replacing our ring of protection. Plus, defeating those horny dinosaurs has inspired our climaxing wizard to greater heights, bumping us up to level 9, increasing our proficiency and blade song bonuses to +4, giving 5th level spell slots and access to those corresponding spells, but most notably increasing our shadow blade damage by another d8 if we cast it with one of these slots. Continuing on, there's a portal out of here leading us back to the city thankfully, and as we get looking for a way to get past the guards stationed everywhere, we notice a little cave in the wall, wherein we find the Iron Hand Gnomes being led by none other than Wolverine Bongle, who wants us to break inside the Steelwatch Foundry where Gordy's metal police force is being produced by enslaved Gondians and... boom. Which actually isn't the worst idea, especially if we can get the Gondians to escape while the place is blowing up, though Barkus thinks otherwise. Either way, we take the bomb off his hands since it's probably safer in ours. Using our mad hops, we're able to sneak past the guards up front, and a truly miraculous persuasion roll shows that Arya can actually convince even the most stalwart folks to lower a drawbridge into the city. Unfortunately, along the way, we're forced to attend Gortash's coronation to Archduke, a total sham of a ceremony, but he seems to think it makes us pals, so we play along, before finally arriving in the lower city proper. First thing we do, of course, is go donate a buttload of money to Eilistrai, who, for our devotion, both in action and monetary value, rewards us with Anointed in Splendor for a permanent +2 to saves. Then we head down the street and talk to Fitz the Firecracker in order to buy the Dead Shot, essentially just expanding our crit range by 1 so long as it's equipped. Also down the road, we find Eredin from Act 1, who's looking for the Night Song and wants to sell her to an evil wizard living in this tower. Sadly, he doesn't quite believe us when we tell him we've got no clue where she is.
Hope you hid it well, mate.
Either way, all this shopping and walking and talking has Arya a bit stressed, so we head back to camp only to find Halsin absolutely tweaking over an unconscious Scratch, eventually going as far as stabbing himself in his lunacy only to reveal it was Orin all along. God, she would have loved drama class at the Bladesinger Academy. This whole pantomime is just her fun way of letting us know she's kidnapped Halsin and will only give him back if we kill Gortash and duel her to the death over the Netherstones. Then she's gone in a puff of smoke. Since we once again didn't get any sleep, we decide to head back to bed another time, only to get jumped by Eredin and his goons come looking for Dame Aelin. Now, me personally, I wouldn't want to get on the bad side of a very annoyed and sleep-deprived Arya, but hey, whacking fellas is great stress relief. Plus, after we hit 1, we get to test our new ring and heal up. The evening assailants are pretty weak, though still strong enough to defeat the demigod daughter of Selûne, but let's be real here, that's not saying much. Whenever it's Arya's turn, we just slash the heck out of anyone nearby and wander further down the alleys, leaving most of them struggling to keep up as always. After taking out a few more with a couple quick stabs, including Eredin himself, we've built up a bunch of arcane acuity and get a massive upcasted bonus action hold person thanks to our ring, making the rest of this fight more of a bonding experience for Aelin and Arya than anything else, leaving the one unheld cleric for the very last. One thing's for sure though, we both definitely want to trounce Lorroakin in his own citadel. But first, a good night's sleep is in order. The next day, we get exploring the city and do some run-of-the-mill errands for Arya, like solving a bunch of puzzles in a hidden long-lost dead dragon's lair, blowing up the world's greasiest sewer dweller and all of his friends, and successfully read a local ne'er-do-well's mind to gain access to the local thieves guild, all of which gives us enough experience to reach level 10, granting all the usual progression alongside Song of Defense. A rather interesting tool that lets us reduce damage we take from attacks by expending spell slots, though usually we'd rather keep them for stuff like shield anyways. Also, now that we do have access to the prior mentioned guild hall, we can freely buy Terrazul, which is essentially a speed potion that lasts for 2 turns, stacks with haste, and doesn't take an action or bonus action to consume. Very good as a pinch or in one. With our little baggie now in hand, we go pay a visit to Lorroakin, and Roland, who's also his apprentice or something, but he doesn't much like him either.
But never under your tutelage.
And a fight kicks off. Also, despite it being a little while since our last fight, Aelin still has missing HP from her fight with Eredin. Nonetheless, we get showing Lorroakin what a real wizard looks like as we start clobbering his elementals and try to confuse as many baddies as we can, forgetting about the head honcho's deadly reaction, meaning we immediately resort to our brand new drugs to heal up using a potion. Aelin promptly goes down herself, and she is definitely not getting up this time, and sadly neither is Roland, who goes down before he gets a turn as well. His sacrifice will certainly be remembered, while we continue cutting down the first Myrmidon and getting to work on the next. As each one falls, Lorroakin's reaction gets a little bit weaker, making sure of course to end our turn out of the way with HP topped up, made extra easy thanks to a speed pot. Most of the enemies on this round spend their turns healing up or buffing each other with various spells, and the few who do reach us don't do a lot of damage. However, the Terrazul runs out, so we need to survive another round of attacks too, thankfully none of which are deadly. Once we do get another turn, we're able to quickly take out Myrmidon 2 of 4 and continue to heal as always, plus make sure we don't miss another round by refreshing our speed. At this point, there's not too much to be afraid of since Lorroakin is the only one really dishing out regular damage, and even his strongest spells aren't enough. Continuing to wail on the remaining elementals over the next few rounds, we decide to let our speed potion lapse since Lorroakin isn't doing doing much. Of course, the moment we do, he starts spewing fireball after fireball and almost takes us out. Our hero survives regardless with 6 whole HP, which is 6 times the amount necessary, so it really wasn't even close. And the climax we've been building up to this whole time is enough to fully heal while getting us close enough to finish off the 2 remaining summons. To make things even better, the immature whiny wizard has resorted to using spells like poison spray. As such, it's hardly a challenge to finish him with both his offense and defense fully depleted. Our celestial companion, in customary fashion, decides to stop playing dead at this point and do her part in ensuring we'll never have to deal with Lorroakin again. To reward ourselves for ridding the world of one more wayward wizard, and because it's what Roland would have wanted, we go loot the vaults and grab all sorts of cool scrolls that we can learn, including some very special ones like Artistry of War, which is basically a superpowered magic missile that can only be cast once per long rest. After clearing out the vaults and mourning the loss of our frenemy Roland, we decide to hit up the local therapist's office. When the session gets started though, the therapist herself doesn't even want us to look at her, which only makes us suspicious. But we share our woes regardless, answering question after question, pouring our heart out to this mysterious woman who eventually tells Arya that she has a melancholy heart. No doubt because of all the internalized guilt that she feels for the harm caused by the monstrous acts her people have committed in the name of deities like Loth or Shar, such as...
I am Viconia de Vere.
Yeah, such as her. Before we can properly confront Viconia, the would-be drow hero, she dips into the basement where we chase after her with the Eversight ring equipped to prevent any Shar and Darkness shenanigans, and Shovel gets us a surprise round. Starting things off, we drop a cloud kill on as many of the Sharans as we can before passing the round. Viconia, who actually rolled higher than us, castigates her heart form, giving us a whole host of debuffs and even gets guaranteed crits on us now. But so long as we keep her away with spells like Ice Storm and skedaddle backwards at the end of every turn, we should be okay. Yes, our regular strategy of kiting enemies excels in this fight too, this time with funny slipping animations. The enemies are also smart enough to use Darkness Clouds to overwrite Cloud Kill, and some of them can even teleport right over any obstacles we put in their way. Viconia herself does also teleport right over the ice next round and makes us feeble and frightened, which still isn't too big of a deal since we can wall of fire this narrow staircase and continue to misty step backwards. As things continue, our Twisted Kin's followers just kind of throw themselves into the fire, and it becomes apparent if we don't want them to catch us, they simply won't. The only person who's been able to catch up is the leader lady herself. However, we're no longer frightened by her, so we can swing freely, proccing her legendary action, admittedly taking a big chunk of damage. Though not so much that we don't also speed potion and keep swinging away, almost killing her, then continuing our kiting further up the stairs. Everyone else keeps struggling to make it past the upcasted wall of fire, and our main foe decides she's better off being nowhere near Arya's line of sight. Sadly for this lot, we have a second upcasted wall of fire, and another ice storm to boot, which does trigger the legendary action again, but doesn't get melted by the wall of fire, because that's just how these spells interact, oddly enough. Now, not only do they need to navigate through this wall, but they also need to do it while trying not to slip down the stairs. The vicious vulture Viconia gets vanquished on her turn, and she will no longer prey on the grief of the poor denizens of this city, leaving behind just the very few stragglers who manage to make it past all of our AoE spells, and those do not take a long time to clean up at all, especially with the help of Hold Person. Afterwards, we head to the back of the room where we sacrifice Viconia's shield to this altar in order to open a door to another hidden room wherein lies a Mirror of Loss. Upon passing a check with it, we're able to temporarily sacrifice 2 points of one ability in order to gain a permanent 2 for another. We choose Dexterity, bumping it up to 22, increasing our attacks, initiative, AC, and saving throws. It really is the best stat. Because the whole actual therapy thing didn't end up working out, we do a little retail therapy instead, buying a nice new fit for our spiffy looking Spellblade. Tragically though, as much as the new outfit helps the headaches, they immediately come back when we see our fellow wizard and friend Volothab Gadarm being lynched on our way to the Steelwatch Foundry. Freeing him only takes a single arrow shot at least, and these goons, one of them literally naming themselves that by the way, are as easy as memorizing a first level spell the way they go down one after another to all of our usual tricks. Volo says he needs to talk to us about something later on at camp where he'll eventually give us the Slayer Knowledge permanent buff, making it a little bit easier for us when we have to square up against Orin. Just a moment later, we use invisibility to sneak into the foundry nearby, finding that the Gondians are indeed being enslaved to make the Steel Watch, with the threat of both them and their families getting exploded to Kingdom Come. We at least find the blind leader of the Gondians, Xander Tubin, all by himself in the back and are able to start up a conversation. He says that if we help find and free the hostage families, him and his people would throw off their chains, and if there's anything Arya is happy to help with, it's definitely that. With a goal in mind, we get investigating the city for leads, pretty quickly finding a warehouse full of wargs, a warg house if you will, that are just as hastily cleared out. And with them out of the way, we find a hidden basement with a submarine of all things. Conveniently enough, its pilot is also here. All it takes is a bit of intimidating for him to agree to take us to the underwater prison known as the Iron Throne. Luckily, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, you can just keep pestering the complicit slaver. Soon enough, we arrive in the depths right as Gortash catches wind of our perfect plot and starts to blow the place to smithereens. Since we're on a timer, we get prepping with all the tools we've got. Vigilance elixirs, blur, a flying potion, blade song, a speed potion, you name it. And once we enter the place and see just how little time we've got, we also down some Terrazul, giving a whole lot of move speed. Enough move speed, in fact, to free literally everyone imprisoned here in a single turn, including Omeluum, who is somehow here, and the righteous Duke Ravengard, who has been mind controlled, so I don't really know why he is here either. Plus, we still have enough leftover actions to take one of the fishy prison guards out for good. Unfortunately, we can only do so much as some of the prisoners get shot down themselves, but with all of them on a mad dash towards the submarine, the vast majority make it out alive. And so does Arya, as we climb up just in time to avoid the ocean-shaking explosion and get out of dodge. Now that all the hostages are freed, we use invisibility to once again sneak into the foundry, this time heading straight for the basement, where I guess the Gondians already heard the good news because they're tussling it out big time. However, our big-brained wizard is smart enough to know they'll only die before she can save them if she joins in the fight, so we go for the core, using Knock to open the door in our way, invisibility again to sneak past the Hellfire Watchers that guard everything, and the bomb that Wulbren gave us to show Gortash we can blow up things too. I'd show you guys the fireworks, but this Steel Watcher decided to censor any violence for us. How kind. Now, you may be worried about all the Gondians that were inside, but they actually are completely fine, all in a day's work. No good deed goes unpunished, however, as Wulbren himself shows up at this point, wanting to commit some genocide.
Let's end this!
We, of course, aren't gonna let that happen, and if it means we get to absolutely obliterate Wulbren, well, that's just icing on the cake. And hey, we don't even lose our friendship with Barkus because he's just such a little sweetie pie. In fact, we only gain things as we reach level 11, our penultimate level, which grants 6th level spells, the very pinnacle of our magical might. Before we go track down Gortash, we do take a quick detour to the local Tsar Palace, where we hear a local vampire lord has been up to no good. Once inside, we put all his little vampire spawn out of their misery, solve a little word puzzle to open the big ominous red glowing door, eradicate the mangy menagerie just sort of hanging out in his ballroom, and later than sooner track him down in his basement where he's performing some sort of profane ritual. He really isn't a tough fight for Arya, since we can just counterspell everything he does over and over and whack him a few times in the face to get him running back to his coffin, at which point he really doesn't last. For our efforts, we get Rhapsody, a +1 dagger that serves as our new offhand and gives up to a +3 bonus to attacks, damage, and spell save DC for each enemy killed that long rest. Basically just meaning we have to go into this basement and kill 3 rats every day. Being that we're properly equipped, we get raiding Worm's Rock Fortress, and by that I mean using our tried and true invisibility to just walk past all the guards stationed here straight to the rooftop where Gortash awaits. Shovel gets all of the Gortmeister's goons surprised, surprised, heroically sacrificing her life in the process, and we start going after said goons on our turn, ticking down their HP. As he is now, the Bay Knight Tyrant is essentially a non-factor, so we largely ignore him, simply continuing to run outside in the hopes that he follows. He does indeed keep following over the course of the next few rounds as we get closer and closer to the ledge, but he's a little slower than we'd hoped for, and as such, we dip back and occasionally whack him for a little bit more arcane acuity, causing him to transform into a much scarier version of himself, capable of placing curses on us that deal 20 d10 damage if we let them go off. Tragically enough, our plan to telekinesis him off the cliff doesn't work because we just can't get proper line of sight, leading to a bit of a change in strategies. We continue to pester his lackeys, who are way too slow to be concerned for Arya, and waltz over to a different part of the roof while using remove curse scrolls to get rid of this giant hand whenever he places it on us. While we wait for everyone to follow us over here, we keep taking out the little guys where we can, and eventually we're able to use one telekinesis to slam Gortash over here, and a second one to slam him down 5 stories to his pitiful demise. The only surviving soldier at this point also does not take a long time to kill, and the second of 3 nether stones is ours just like that. True to her word, Orin leaves behind a note at our camp telling us to seek out the murder tribunal. If we succeed there, we'll gain access to her true temple. When we actually arrive here, however, we find Saravok Onchev, another figure straight out of the history books and a ballspawn who threatened Baldur's Gate in decades past. He seeks to turn us into an unholy assassin to serve the Lord of Murder, and while it's easy for Arya to understand why a god would want such a perfect spell sword, we'd really rather not. Still, we play along since we're smart enough to wait for the right moment to strike, telling them all about how we murked Gortash, and they're really into it.
Your words delight him.
So into it that they want to meet us in the next room to make it official. The ghosts teleport on ahead, but poor Saravok has to walk, which means we get a beautiful booming blade while he's isolated.
Sort of fight. And now you have one.
Now that we have the fight that we sought, our extra attack isn't working properly, so we just pass things to Saravok and let him whiff a few times thanks to our precasted blur. Meanwhile, his buddies are slowly walking back over here. It is quickly back to Arya's turn, where we keep building up arcane acuity and bonus action hold person him to make all future attacks even more deadly. As such, only 1 round afterwards, the far too old man is taken out for good and will hopefully stay in the history books. His ethereal lackeys are somewhat spooky, however most of that comes from the fact that they have strong spells. Since we have counterspell, though, we don't have to worry. Once that issue is solved, so too are they. From Saravok's corpse, we grab the means we need to enter Orin's temple, as well as a convenient map to the place. Before we head there though, during our prep, we walk past a local bed and board wherein we hear a couple ladies getting freaky with tentacles, and not in a fun way. It's not tough for us to kill a lone newborn mind flayer at this point, and as a reward from the surviving lady, we get Rapture, a buff that lasts till our next long rest, increasing all of our rolls by a d6. After that's dealt with, we're off to the temple, walking past the suspiciously ambushable site, completely invisible just in case, and using the amulet afterwards to enter the temple proper. Inside, we find Orin looming over Halsin, not too happy that we murdered Saravok, but luckily Arya's way with words has never let us... Well, we tried our darndest. Halsin may have bit the dust like so many of our friends along the way, but just like them, he will not be forgotten. Starting things off, we promptly and instantly get stunned. Thankfully, stunned or not, Orin misses the vast majority of her attacks. However, because we can't do anything, we get afflicted by Baal's edict, meaning we must kill someone else this turn or die. Plus, we get whacked a bit more, which would have killed if it wasn't for the universal resistance elixir that we drank before the fight. When we do get a turn, we blade song as always, whack this guy to build up arcane acuity, heal up all of our missing HP, and use a thunder wave to kill not just the spellcaster here, but one of the ritual casters buffing up Orin every round. We get hit with another Baal's edict and laid into a little bit more, but our AC and saving throws are so high that it's not too big of a deal. Next round, we take out the fellow who stunned us earlier by removing his unstoppable stacks and thunder waving him too, as well as cast blur to avoid Orin even further, something that works out wonderfully, as she's pretty much a non-factor for the next few rounds at least. From here, we bonk her with our booming blade, activating the crawler mucus that we coated our weapon in beforehand, paralyzing her completely, giving us the next couple rounds to run all around the arena, demonstrating why railings should be included in the construction of any good underground cult's battle arena. She does manage to break free of the poison right after and land a couple of pretty dang good hits, but it is too little too late, since now we're able to permanently remove her unstoppable stacks with a few magic missile upcasts. And her attacks continue to miss like no tomorrow, so the only real damage we end up taking is from her legendary action as we lay into her turn after turn. Right when she's about to die, just to add insult to injury, we give her the same treatment as her lackeys. Like that, the third and final netherstone is ours for the taking. Plus, when we pick it up, we also learn the location of where the nether brain is hiding. A good thing that in the middle of that fight, we worked our way up to the very peak of our power, level 12. We get a couple new spells as well, but more importantly, our final feat in the form of Savage Attacker, letting us reroll our damage dice and take the higher result whenever we attack in melee. Because this rerolls each die individually and we roll a ton of dice, this is a massive increase to our damage. Of course, we do want to take out the brain, but there's one more infernal fellow we gotta check in on first, and that means breaking into the local Diabolist shop. Handily enough, we find a ritual circle already set up for us. All we need to do is grab the various materials we need to open up a portal, then recall our school lessons on how to open portals as we plop them into position to get a doorway right into Raphael's House of Hope. Rather aptly named as far as houses go, since the moment we're in, we immediately meet Hope, who seems to recognize us as a Bladesinger.
You came.
Seeing her chance to get out of her imprisonment here, she begs for our aid and in return grants an honestly rather flattering disguise to Arya. We of course promise to free her in any way we can, finding ourselves sneaking into Raphael's boudoir through the balcony. In here we find a fiend who looks shockingly like Raphael himself, whose bed is so tall that we can't even reach him while he's asleep in it, so we gotta talk to him.
A lost little mouse.
And then get obliterating him with the most powerful booming blades we've dished out yet. Much to our dismay, he does summon a whole bunch of imps too, but we've got a decent chunk of AoE damage to help with that, and a protection from evil and good that we had the foresight to cast that keeps him at bay. Raphael's lookalike Harlep gets taken down real fast, and in case you're curious what our damage is looking like, it's pretty dang good. Soon after, all of the ill-fated impotent imps go down too, with only a small scratch or two landing our way. On Harlep's corpse, we grab a key to Raphael's hidden safe, also in the boudoir, revealing a note with the password needed to grab the Orphic Hammer, capable of removing any and all chains, including, as the name suggests, Orpheus's as well. Also, there's a bath in here that fully restores us as if we took a long rest that we can use as much as we'd like, which means after we head into the archives and steal everything in it, including the Amulet of Greater Health to increase our HP to 122, and the prior mentioned Orphic Hammer, we don't have to worry about holding back as all the denizens of the house square up, such as this Hell Sphere, a literal ball of hellfire that can still be mind controlled with planar binding. Sadly, this thing kinda blows. Luckily, it's not our main source of damage, and we can feel free to blitz our way through all these little guys till eventually our balls start slamming into another ball while we just sit in the bath. In a real enemies to lovers twist, right when they're both brought down to next to 0 HP, they just can't bring themselves to deliver the finishing blow. Since Arya is a real bleeding heart, she takes it upon herself to finish them off with a single cast of a spell so they don't spend a moment apart. Once the main floor of the house is cleared out, we head into the basement where Hope is imprisoned and try to catch her jailer's attention with a chain lightning. To no avail. They do eventually notice the deadly spellcaster that just obliterated half of them, but for the most part they miss when they do attack, although they do have the odd scary ray from the spectators that puts some ill effect on us, getting Arya actually quite low at one point. After the crowd control wears off and we can heal up though, we can just walk into melee and take pretty much everyone out in just a couple swings, since our crit hits deal almost 100 damage each. Now that the jailers are all gone and the house is cleared, we get to free Hope and do our prep before we confront Rafi himself, who is no doubt on his way to stop our escape. That means summoning an Earth Myrmidon, a couple Mud Mephits as well, and a Celestial Deva scroll that we got from Leroican. Plus, once we're actually at the exit, we down a flying and speed potion before Raphael himself shows up.
You
alongside this lady who Arya absolutely hates from the look of it, and Yrgir from the Mausoleum who decides to join our side since he doesn't much like Raphael. Just like that, down comes the claw and a fight kicks off. Thanks to a vigilance elixir, we go first, using an artistry of war and an upcasted magic missile to obliterate one of the soul pillars buffing the big man, then skedaddling out the door, leaving everyone else to sort things out. Yrgir just gets disintegrating that random lady, the Deva we summoned wallops a nearby pillar, and our mud methods get disintegrated before they get a turn. Alongside Hope, sadly, who gets hit by a massive hellfire blast, instantly triggering her death ward and causing her to burn to death at the start of her turn. For the record, we did give her a vigilance elixir in an attempt to prevent that. Our Myrmidon does eventually get their turn, where they work on their assigned pillar, and before you know it, it's back to Arya, who spends another round doing the same thing as last, taking out one more pillar. This round in general is much more tame, with our summons hitting the pillars as before, and the enemies just kind of milling about, not doing a whole lot. Either way, pillar 3 gets got by our Myrmidon. A few baddies have started to filter their way out of the room towards Arya, who immediately disintegrates them first chance we get, and right afterwards the final pillar drops. Something Raphael makes clear he isn't too happy about, as now he actually focuses our Myrmidon. With all of the pillars gone, we're not too upset as the rounds go by, with Arya taking out Raphael's goons, and Raphael takes out ours in return. Once most of the little guys are cleared out of the way, we start focusing on the big man properly, making sure to end our turns as far away as possible to avoid his massive damage. Yrgir sadly bites the dust since all the little hits he's been taking eventually add up, leaving Arya truly by her lonesome. Right when Raphael stops next to a rather dangerous looking death pit. Well, I mean, he's just kinda asking for a thunderwave at this point, right? And yes, in typical Raphael fashion, those wings really were just for show. Wouldn't you know it, as the last two champions go down, we barely managed to avoid winning this entire fight without taking a single point of damage, just as our flawless perfectionist is always aiming for. Afterwards, we take a mostly pleasant boat trip over to where the brain awaits us, if you ignore the part where it tries to impale us with a stalactite and blows up our boat. Upon actually getting there though, the brain is far more massive than ever before, and no doubt more powerful too, powerful enough to bring us into its psyche. Before we can use the nether stones to properly bring the beast down, we find out this whole thing was a part of its plan, all to get a hold of the nether stones to power itself up. Wait, what was that whole blowing up our boat thing about then? Was that just for fun? Yeah, anyways, finally, after God knows how many countless attempts I've given this, we're presented with the hardest check in the game, and for the very first time ever, in one grand climactic moment, we pass it. Arya unleashes the full might of the nether stones within the brain's psyche, only to mildly inconvenience it and have to be saved by the Emperor anyways. But hey, at least we get to save Orpheus now, not that the Emperor much cares for that.
Do not seek me again.
Apparently, Orpheus doesn't much care for it either actually, since he blames us for his imprisonment. Once everything is properly explained to him though, he realizes we've gotta work together, and that one of us needs to become a full illithid to properly use the nether stones. Something that he tragically takes on himself, sacrificing himself to save all others. Just in time too, because as we head outside we find the city almost in ruins and things getting more dire by the moment. Thankfully, we're not the only heroes who have risen to the occasion. As much as Arya has tried to rise to the occasion to not endanger any others, all those we've helped along the way are here to return the favor, and it's a surprisingly full room. With their help, we head into the sewers to avoid the large army up above, decimating them with Orpheus's brutal black holes and slaughtering them with Zevlor's Hell Riders' shattering smites. After that, we're able to sneak all the way up to the base of the brain's stem, where we've got no choice but to make the brutal climb. Don't ask me why a flight spell wouldn't work. At the top, our final confrontation begins, and the Emperor, now a thrall under the nether brain, shows up to stop us. Sadly for him, we've taken vigilance elixirs, speed potions, and flying potions, so we immediately dimension door to the brain's crown, use a featherfall scroll to bait out counter spells, a globe of invulnerability to protect us, and Orpheus gets channeling the nether stones, finishing up with a darkness arrow to make us extra safe. As a result, all of the bad guys just kind of walk around the place, not really really sure what to do, and when it's back to Orpheus, the portal into the brain finally opens up, where we can see that successful check earlier did actually reduce his HP by a fifth. Either way, once Arya is inside, we use another globe of invulnerability to keep us nice and safe, while Orpheus spends a few rounds buffing us up with Fierce Perilous Stakes, each stack of which increases our damage by 15, meaning when we cast Magic Missile, we get the brain nice and low enough to finally unleash the greatest climax that the world has ever seen. At long last, Arya's first quest is over. The brain is defeated and the grand design is put to rest. Everything we built up all this time has come to fruition. But don't worry, stories like this don't end so easily. Arya still has many more quests to go on, people to save, and challenges to face, and you know what? So do we.
To you.
Thank you very much for watching, folks. This is the end of the Monoclass Challenge series that I've been doing for 2.5 years. It has been quite a journey, and I've learned a lot along the way, and I'm truly grateful for those of you who have shown support in any capacity, even if it's just watching the first 5 minutes of one video. As mentioned, though, we've got more challenges to face. This is not the end of the channel, nor is it the end of the Baldur's Gate 3 content that I'll be making. I've got a lot more in the works that might be a little bit different in style, but I hope you'll still end up liking it. So don't go anywhere, and thank you once more for being here in the first place. And a very special thanks for our storyteller tier members, Okan, Mark Rainbow, Dappy Renee, Vivian, El Guardia, Ramon Standalone, Witch Amy, Shmentai Neko, Miku, Achilles the Spartan, Hey What Does This Do, and Cristeras W2F.